Kim Tae-ho pressed his face against the cold window of the research vessel. Stars dotted the endless black space around them like tiny diamonds. He had been studying alien creatures for 5 years now, but the excitement never faded. Today, they were heading to planet Zerion 7, where strange new life forms had been discovered. "Tae-ho, come look at this," called Park Soo-jin from the communication station. Her voice carried a mix of wonder and concern. "I'm picking up some unusual readings from the planet's surface." Tae-ho walked over to her station, his boots making soft sounds on the metal floor. The research ship was small but efficient, designed for long missions in deep space. Only 3 people were aboard: himself, Soo-jin, and their engineer Lee Dong-woo. "What kind of readings?" Tae-ho asked, looking at the glowing screens filled with data. Soo-jin pointed to several red markers on her display. "Energy signatures I've never seen before. They're moving in patterns, almost like they're organized." Dong-woo looked up from his repair work on the engine systems. "Could be natural phenomena. Some planets have strange magnetic fields that create odd patterns." Tae-ho studied the data more carefully. As a xenobiologist, he had learned to trust his instincts about alien life. Something about these readings felt different. They were too organized, too purposeful to be natural. "Let's get closer," Tae-ho decided. "But keep our defenses ready." Their ship moved toward the planet slowly. Zerion 7 was a world of purple skies and silver oceans. Massive crystal formations jutted from the surface like frozen lightning. It was beautiful and alien at the same time. "Tae-ho," Soo-jin's voice was tight with worry now. "I'm detecting several large objects approaching us. Fast." Before anyone could respond, the ship shook violently. Red warning lights flashed throughout the cabin. Dong-woo ran to his station and began pressing buttons rapidly. "We're caught in some kind of tractor beam," he shouted over the noise of alarms. "I can't break free." Through the window, Tae-ho saw them. 3 massive ships unlike anything he had ever seen. They were dark gray with sharp edges and glowing red lights. Each ship was at least 10 times larger than their research vessel. "Unknown vessel." A deep voice spoke through their communication system. The words were translated by their computer, but the tone was cold and threatening. "You have entered Faldorian space without permission. Prepare to be boarded." Soo-jin looked at Tae-ho with wide eyes. "Faldorians? I've never heard of them." Neither had Tae-ho, but he was learning quickly that the galaxy was full of species humans had not yet encountered. Most of them were not friendly to strangers. The alien ships pulled their vessel into the largest ship's docking bay. The research ship settled onto the metal floor with a loud clang. Through the windows, they could see alien figures moving toward them. "What do we do?" Dong-woo asked. His hands shook slightly as he powered down their systems. "We cooperate," Tae-ho said quietly. "We're scientists, not soldiers. Maybe we can explain that we're just here to study." The airlock door opened with a hiss. The first alien to enter was massive, nearly 8 feet tall with gray skin and 4 arms. Its eyes were bright yellow and seemed to glow in the dim light. Behind it came several more aliens, all carrying weapons that looked advanced and dangerous. "I am Captain Vorth of the Valdorian Empire," the large alien spoke. Its voice was deep and rumbling. "You are prisoners of war." "War?" Tae-ho stepped forward slowly, keeping his hands visible and empty. "We're not at war with anyone. We're scientists from Earth. We came here to study the planet's wildlife." Captain Vorth made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was harsh and unpleasant. "Humans. We have heard of your weak species. You claim to be peaceful, but you spread across the galaxy like a disease." "That's not true," Soo-jin said, her voice steady despite her fear. "We explore to learn, not to conquer." "Silence," Vorth commanded. One of the other aliens pointed a weapon at Soo-jin. "You will speak, only when spoken to." The aliens searched their ship quickly and efficiently. They took all the equipment and data storage devices. Tae-ho watched sadly as years of research were carried away. "What will happen to us?" Tae-ho asked. Vorth studied him with those glowing, yellow eyes. "That depends on how entertaining you prove to be. The Valdorian Empire values strength above all else. The weak serve the strong, or they die. The three humans were moved to a holding cell inside the alien ship. The cell was small and cold, with metal walls and a single bench. A force field hummed across the entrance, preventing escape. "This is bad," Dongwu whispered once they were alone. "Really bad." Sujin sat on the bench and put her head in her hands. What did he mean about being entertaining? Taeho paced the small cell, his mind working. He had studied many alien cultures during his training. Species that valued strength often settled disputes through combat. "I think they want us to fight." "Fight what?" Sujin asked. "Each other, wild animals, other prisoners. It's a common practice among warrior cultures." The ship traveled for 3 days. During that time, the humans were given basic food and water, but no information about their destination. Guards came by occasionally to stare at them through the force field, making comments in their own language that the translation system couldn't process properly. On the 3rd day, Captain Vorth returned to their cell. With him was an even larger alien wearing elaborate armor decorated with strange symbols. "I am Warlord Kethavar," the new alien announced. "I command this battle group. Your fate has been decided." Taeho stood up straight, trying to show no fear. "What fate?" "You will be taken to Valdos Prime, our capital world. There you will face the trials of Dominion in the Grand Arena. If you prove worthy through combat, you may earn the right to serve the Empire. If you fail, you will die with honor." "And if we refuse?" Sujin asked. Kethavar's laugh was like grinding metal. "Then you die without honor. The choice is yours." Dongwu stood up beside Taeho. "How long do we have to prepare?" 1 week once. We reach Valdos Prime. Use the time wisely. Pray to whatever gods your species worships. Train your bodies. Prepare your minds for what is to come. The warlord turned to leave, then paused. "I should mention that no human has ever survived the trials of Dominion. Your species is considered particularly weak and cowardly by our standards. You will provide amusing sport for the crowds before your inevitable deaths." After the aliens left, the three humans sat in heavy silence. The reality of their situation was sinking in. They were going to be forced to fight for their lives in an alien arena, for the entertainment of a species that saw them as nothing more than weak prey. "We have to survive this," Taeho said finally. "Not just for ourselves, but to prove that humans are more than these aliens think we are." Sujin nodded slowly. "But how? We're scientists, not warriors." Taeho looked at his two friends and companions. They had faced dangerous situations before during their research, but nothing like this. Still, humans had survived worse odds throughout history. They would find a way. "We use what we know best," he said. "We study, we learn, we adapt." The ship continued toward Valdos Prime, carrying 3 humans toward an uncertain fate in an alien arena where death was the most likely outcome. The transport ship dropped out of hyperspace with a violent shudder that threw Taeho against the wall of their cell. Through the small window, he saw their destination for the first time. Valdos Prime hung in space like a massive jewel, its surface covered in gleaming cities and towering structures that reached toward the stars. "Look at the size of it," Sujin whispered, pressing her face to the window beside him. The planet was enormous, easily 3 times larger than Earth. Huge ships moved between orbital stations like schools of metal fish. Everything about this world spoke of power and advanced technology. Dongwu joined them at the window. "How many people live down there?" "Billions, probably," Taeho replied. "This is the heart of their empire." As their ship descended through the atmosphere, they could see the cities more clearly. Massive pyramids and towers stretched up from the surface, connected by bridges that spanned incredible distances. Everything was built on a grand scale, designed to impress and intimidate. The ship landed at a military spaceport filled with warships. Guards came to escort the 3 humans off the vessel. Taeho got his first real look at Valdorian civilization as they were marched through the facility. The aliens were all large and powerful looking, but they came in different varieties. Some had 4 arms like Captain Vorth, while others had 2 arms but stood nearly 9 feet tall. Their skin ranged from gray to dark purple, and many had elaborate tattoos or scars covering their bodies. "Those marks," Taeho said quietly to Sujin. "I think they represent battle honors." The guards loaded them into a transport vehicle that moved through the city streets. The buildings around them were massive and imposing, built from dark stone and metal. Valdorian citizens stopped to stare at the humans as they passed. Some pointed and made comments in their harsh language. "They're looking at us like we're already dead," Dongwu muttered. Their destination became clear as they approached the center of the city. Rising from the urban landscape like a mountain was the Grand Arena. It was the largest structure Taeho had ever seen, easily big enough to hold 1,000,000 spectators. Towers and spires decorated its exterior, and massive screens showed images of past battles. The transport entered the arena complex through a heavily guarded gate. They were taken deep underground, into a maze of corridors and holding areas. The smell hit them first, a mixture of sweat, fear, and something else Taeho couldn't identify. "Welcome to your new home," one of the guards said in broken human language. "Enjoy your last week of life." They were placed in a larger cell than the one on the ship, but it was still cramped and uncomfortable. The walls were covered with scratches and markings left by previous prisoners. Some looked like countdown marks. Others were names or symbols from alien cultures. "We're not the first ones to be held here," Sujin observed, running her fingers over some of the markings. A voice spoke from the cell next to theirs. "No, you are not, and you will not be the last." Taeho approached the wall that separated them from the other prisoner. "Who are you?" "My name is Zeklon. I am from the Thraxi Coalition. I have been here for 2 months, waiting for my turn in the arena." 2 months? Dongwu sounded horrified. "Why so long?" "The Valdorians like to build anticipation. They study their prisoners, learn about their fighting styles, then match them against appropriate opponents. The crowds pay more for interesting battles." Sujin sat down on the hard bench. "What kind of opponents?" "Beasts from across the galaxy. Predators that the Valdorians have captured and trained for combat. Some are intelligent, others are just hungry." Taeho felt a chill run down his spine. "How many prisoners survive?" "Very few. Maybe 1 in 50. The Valdorians only respect strength and fighting skill. Anything else is considered weakness." Over the next few days, they learned more about their situation from Zeklon and other prisoners. The Grand Arena held trials every few days, with different types of combat. Sometimes prisoners fought each other. Other times they faced wild beasts. The most popular events involved multiple opponents or legendary creatures. "The crowds love variety," explained another prisoner named Veltar, who had been captured from a mining colony. "They get bored with simple fights. The arena master always tries to create something new and exciting." Taeho spent his time observing everything around him. He watched the guards, studied the other prisoners, and listened to every conversation. He could understand. As a scientist, he knew that information was his most valuable weapon. On the 4th day, they were visited by the arena master himself. Vextar was even larger than the other Valdorians, with elaborate armor and ceremonial weapons. His skin was covered in scars that formed intricate patterns. "So these are the humans," he said, walking around their cell slowly. "Smaller than I expected. Weaker looking, too. We may surprise you," Taeho said calmly. Vextar laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. "I doubt that. Your species has no reputation for combat prowess. But that makes you interesting in a different way. The crowds will enjoy watching you struggle." The arena master studied each of them carefully. "You," he pointed at Dongwu, "you have the look of someone who works with machines. You will face the gear stalkers, mechanical predators that hunt in packs." He turned to Sujin. "You have quick eyes and steady hands. The shadow dancers will test your reflexes. They move faster than most creatures can see." Finally, he looked at Taeho. "And you. You think too much. I can see it in your eyes. You will face something that cannot be reasoned with or understood. Something that exists only to kill." After Vextar left, The three humans sat in stunned silence. The reality of their situation was becoming clearer. They were going to be entertainment, nothing more. "We need to prepare," Tejo said finally. "We need to get stronger, faster, smarter." "How?" Sujin asked. "We have no weapons, no training equipment, nothing. We have each other. We have our knowledge. And we have one advantage the Valdorians don't expect." "What's that?" Dongwu asked. "We're human. We adapt. We survive. We find ways to win even when the odds are impossible." Over the remaining days, they began to prepare. Dongwu shared everything he knew about mechanical systems, hoping it would help him understand his opponents. Sujin practiced moving quickly in the small space, working on her reflexes and balance. Tejo did something different. He spent his time talking to the other prisoners, learning about the creatures they had faced. He asked detailed questions about behavior, hunting patterns, and weaknesses. The other prisoners thought he was just scared and looking for comfort, but Tejo was building a database of knowledge. On their final night before the trials, guards came to their cell with weapons and armor. The selection was impressive. Energy, weapons, plasma swords, projectile firearms, and protective gear from dozens of different worlds. Dongwu chose a plasma rifle and light armor that would let him move quickly. Sujin selected twin energy blades and flexible armor that wouldn't slow her down. Then it was Tejo's turn. He looked at all the weapons laid out before him. Swords, guns, shields, and armor that could probably stop most attacks. The guards waited impatiently for him to choose. Tejo stepped back from the weapons. "I don't want any of these." The guards looked confused. "You must choose weapons. It is required." "No," Tejo said quietly. "I'm going in unarmed." Sujin grabbed his arm. "Tejo, what are you doing? You'll be killed instantly." "Trust me," he said. "I have a plan." The guards reported this to their superiors, who were equally confused. No prisoner had ever refused weapons before. It was seen as either insanity or cowardice. Word spread quickly through the arena complex. The human who was too scared to even hold a weapon. The crowds were already laughing about it. Tomorrow's trials would be more entertaining than anyone expected. But Tejo wasn't scared. He was thinking like a scientist, and he had realized something important. In all the stories he had heard about arena combat, every prisoner had made the same mistake. They had tried to fight the beasts on the beast's own terms. Tejo was going to try something completely different. The roar of the crowd was deafening. Tejo had never heard anything like it. A million voices screaming for blood, echoing through the massive arena like thunder. He stood in the preparation chamber, listening to the sound through the thick walls. "First match begins now," announced a guard. The machine worker fights the gear stalkers. Through a small window, Tejo could see into the arena. The floor had transformed into a twisted landscape of metal and steam. Dongwu appeared through a gate on the far side, his plasma rifle ready, sweat visible on his face even from this distance. The gear stalkers emerged from hidden openings in the metal terrain. They were exactly as described, mechanical predators, the size of large wolves with glowing red eyes and razor-sharp claws. They moved with deadly precision, circling Dongwu like a pack of hunters. Dongwu fought bravely. His engineering knowledge helped him understand how the machines moved and where their weak points might be. He managed to destroy 2 of the 5 stalkers before they overwhelmed him. The crowd cheered as he fell, but there was respect in their voices. He had fought well. "Your friend showed courage," said Zeklon from the next chamber. "The Valdorians will remember that." Tejo watched as medics carried Dongwu away. He was alive but badly injured. In Valdorian culture, surviving even a losing battle brought honor. Dongwu would be treated and allowed to serve the Empire as a worker. "Second match," the guard announced. The quick female fights the shadow dancers. The arena floor changed again, becoming a maze of mirrors and dim lighting. Sujin entered cautiously, her twin energy blades casting blue light in the darkness. She looked small and fragile in the vast space. The shadow dancers were living nightmares. They looked like tall, thin humanoids made of pure darkness. They could blend into shadows and move faster than the eye could follow. Only their glowing white eyes gave away their positions. Sujin was clever. Instead of trying to track the creatures with her eyes, she used the mirrors to watch for movement. She listened for the soft sounds they made when they moved. When they attacked, she was ready. The battle was beautiful and terrifying. Sujin moved like a dancer herself, spinning and dodging attacks that would have killed a slower person. She managed to wound 2 of the shadow dancers before one got behind her defenses. The creature's claws raked across her back, sending her to the ground. But even as she fell, Sujin twisted and drove one of her blades into the shadow dancer's chest. Both warrior and creature fell together. The crowd erupted in appreciation. Sujin had not only survived longer than expected, she had taken one of the legendary shadow dancers with her. The medics who carried her away treated her with obvious respect. 2 for 2, Zeklon said quietly. Your friends have brought honor to your species. Now it is your turn. Taeho nodded. He had been watching and learning from both battles. The arena could change into any environment. The creatures were real predators, not simple animals. They were intelligent, dangerous, and had been trained to kill. Final match of the day, the guard announced with obvious amusement. The coward human who refused weapons will face the Shadow Maw of Kepler 442b. Even the other prisoners gasped at this announcement. Taeho had heard whispers about the Shadow Maw during his week of preparation. It was considered one of the most dangerous creatures in the arena's collection. They mean to make an example of you, Zeklon said sadly. The Shadow Maw has killed dozens of armed warriors. Against an unarmed human, it will be a massacre. The preparation chamber door opened. Taeho walked through the tunnel toward the arena floor. The sound of the crowd grew louder with each step. When he emerged into the light, the noise was overwhelming. 1,000,000 Valdorians were on their feet, booing and laughing at the sight of the small human who carried no weapons. Some threw things at the protective barriers. The sound of their mockery was like a physical force. Arena Master Vextar's voice boomed over the crowd. Citizens of Valdos Prime witnessed the cowardice of the human species. This creature was too frightened to even hold a weapon. Watch as the mighty Shadow Maw shows us what happens to the weak. The arena floor began to change around Taeho. The metal dissolved away, replaced by a dark swampland with twisted trees and thick mist. The air became humid and filled with strange smells. Somewhere in the distance, he could hear water dripping and the calls of unseen creatures. Taeho walked to the center of the transformed arena and sat down cross-legged on a small patch of dry ground. The crowd's laughter grew louder. They thought he had given up before the battle even started. Then the Shadow Maw appeared. It emerged from the mist like something from a nightmare. The creature was massive, easily 12 feet long and 6 feet tall at the shoulder. Its body was covered in dark scales that seemed to absorb light. 6 powerful legs carried it forward with surprising grace. Its head was elongated like a crocodile's, but filled with rows of teeth designed for tearing flesh. But it was the creature's eyes that made Taeho's breath catch. They were intelligent, ancient, filled with a pain and rage that went beyond simple hunger. The Shadow Maw stalked toward him slowly, its massive head swaying back and forth. The crowd fell silent, waiting for the kill. Every person in the arena expected to see the human torn apart in seconds. Instead, Taeho did something no one expected. He began to study the creature. As a xenobiologist, Taeho had trained himself to observe alien life forms carefully. He noticed how the Shadow Maw favored its left rear leg slightly, suggesting an old injury. He saw the scars along its flanks, evidence of battles with other predators or perhaps punishment from its captors. Most important, he recognized the signs he had seen in traumatized animals back on Earth. The constant movement of the head, the way it kept checking escape routes, the hypervigilance that spoke of prolonged stress and fear. This creature was not just a predator. It was a prisoner, just like him. The Shadow Maw stopped about 10 feet away from Taeho, confused by his behavior. In its experience, prey either ran or fought. This small creature was doing neither. Taeho began to make soft sounds, not words, but gentle vocalizations that he had learned could calm frightened animals. He kept his movements slow and non-threatening. Most important, he made direct eye contact with the creature. In many species, eye contact was either a challenge or a sign of dominance. But Tejo had studied the files on creatures from Kepler 442b during his preparation week. For the species that lived there, direct eye contact was a sign of respect and recognition. The shadow maw tilted its massive head, studying this strange behavior. Tejo continued his soft sounds, adding hand gestures that he hoped would be interpreted as peaceful. He was essentially trying to say, "I see you. I recognize your intelligence. I mean no harm." Minutes passed. The crowd began to murmur with confusion. Some called for action, but most were too fascinated to interrupt. Slowly, incredibly, the shadow maw began to relax. Its aggressive posture softened. The constant head movement stopped. For the first time in years, the creature felt something other than fear and rage. Tejo very carefully reached into his pocket and pulled out a small piece of food from his last meal. He held it out toward the shadow maw, not as bait, but as an offering, a gesture of friendship. The creature approached cautiously. Its massive head came close enough that Tejo could feel its breath. Then, with surprising gentleness, the shadow maw took the food from his hand. The arena was completely silent now. 1,000,000 Valdorians stared in shock as the most feared predator in their collection sat down beside the small human like a giant, deadly pet. Tejo reached out and gently touched the side of the creature's head. The shadow maw leaned into the touch, making a sound that was almost like purring. Arena Master Vextar's voice was barely a whisper when he finally spoke. "Impossible. This is impossible." But Tejo knew it wasn't impossible at all. He had simply done what humans did best. He had looked past the surface and seen the real creature underneath. Not a monster, but a living being capable of intelligence, emotion, and connection. The crowd began to cheer, but it was different now. They weren't cheering for blood or death. They were cheering for something they had never seen before. A victory, achieved not through violence but through understanding. Tejo stood up slowly, his hand still resting on the shadow maw's head. The creature stood with him, towering over the small human but showing no aggression. He had done the impossible. He had entered the arena unarmed and emerged victorious. But more important, he had shown the Valdorians something they had never imagined possible. Sometimes the greatest strength was not the power to destroy, but the wisdom to understand. News of Tejo's victory spread through Valdo's Prime like wildfire. Within hours, every citizen of the massive city had heard about the human who tamed the shadow maw without weapons. The story grew with each telling. Some said he used magic. Others claimed he was some kind of human battle master with secret powers. Tejo sat in his cell, now alone since his friends had been moved to the medical facilities. The shadow maw had been returned to its holding area, but not before Arena Master Vextar had spent an hour studying the creature's behavior. The massive predator had remained calm and peaceful, showing no signs of its usual aggression. "This changes nothing," Vextar had declared to his staff. "It was a fluke, a moment of weakness from an old creature. Tomorrow we will see what the human can really do." But Tejo could hear the uncertainty in the Arena Master's voice. The Valdorians were confused by what they had witnessed. Their entire understanding of strength and combat had been challenged by a small, unarmed human. The next morning, guards came to escort Tejo to another preparation chamber. This one was larger and more elaborate than the previous day's facilities. Through the windows, he could see that the arena was packed even fuller than before. Word had spread beyond the city. Valdorians from across the planet had come to see the strange human. "Today you face the Razorbacks of Titan," announced a new guard, one Tejo hadn't seen before. "They are crystal-skinned beasts that can cut through metal with their claws. Their hides are harder than armor. Many warriors have died trying to penetrate their defenses." Tejo nodded calmly. During the night, he had been visited by Zeklon, who had been allowed to see him as a reward for good behavior. The alien prisoner had shared everything he knew about the Razorbacks. "They are pack hunters," Zeklon had explained, "but they are also highly intelligent. Some say they can communicate with each other through vibrations in their crystal skin. They have been in the arena for 3 years. In that time, they have killed 47 opponents. Now standing in the preparation chamber, Taeho focused on what he had learned. The Razorbacks were not just mindless killers. They were intelligent creatures who had been forced to fight for years. Like the Shadow Maw, they were prisoners. The arena floor transformed once again. This time, it became a landscape of sharp rocks and narrow canyons. The lighting was dim, creating deep shadows between the stone formations. It was perfect terrain for ambush predators. Taeho walked into the arena to thunderous cheers. The crowd was different today. Instead of mockery and laughter, there was excitement and anticipation. They wanted to see if yesterday's miracle could happen again. He made his way to the center of the rocky maze and sat down, just as he had the day before. The crowd fell silent, watching intently. The Razorbacks appeared from 3 different directions. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Their crystal skin caught the light and threw it back in brilliant flashes of color. Each creature was about the size of a large bear, but their movements were quick and precise. Taeho could see immediately that these creatures were different from the Shadow Maw. Where the larger predator had been driven by pain and rage, the Razorbacks moved with calculated intelligence. They studied him carefully, communicating with each other through soft, chiming sounds that resonated through their crystal bodies. The lead Razorback approached slowly. Taeho could see old scars on its crystal hide, places where the beautiful surface had been cracked and healed, battle damage from years of forced combat. Instead of making the soft sounds he had used with the Shadow Maw, Taeho tried something different. He picked up a small stone and tapped it gently against the rocky ground. The sound echoed through the canyon walls. The Razorbacks stopped moving. Their crystal bodies began to resonate with a similar frequency. Taeho realized he had stumbled onto their method of communication. He continued tapping, creating a simple rhythm. One of the Razorbacks responded with its own pattern of sounds. Then another joined in. Soon all 3 creatures were creating a complex musical conversation that filled the arena with haunting melodies. The crowd was mesmerized. They had never heard the Razorbacks make these sounds during combat. Most Valdorians didn't even know the creatures were capable of such complex communication. Taeho stood up slowly and walked toward the lead Razorback. The creature watched him approach but showed no aggression. When he was close enough, Taeho reached out and gently touched the crystal surface of its hide. The sensation was incredible. He could feel the vibrations running through the creature's body, a constant flow of communication and emotion. Through that touch, he sensed the Razorback's deep sadness and longing for its home world. The creature stepped closer and pressed its head against Taeho's chest. The other 2 Razorbacks approached and did the same. For the first time in years, they felt understood by another intelligent being. Arena Master Vexitar watched from his control booth, his 4 hands gripping the railing tightly. "This is impossible," he muttered. "No one has ever communicated with the Razorbacks before." But in the arena below, the impossible was happening again. Taeho sat surrounded by the 3 crystal creatures, all of them creating a beautiful harmony of sound that echoed through the massive structure. The crowd erupted in cheers, but these cheers were different from any heard in the arena before. They were not celebrating violence or death. They were celebrating something beautiful and mysterious. High above the arena, in the most exclusive viewing box, sat High Counselor Morgeth. She was one of the most powerful Valdorians in the Empire, responsible for cultural policies and traditions. She had come to see what all the fuss was about. "Fascinating," she said to her aide. "This human is revealing capabilities in our arena, beasts that we never knew existed." "Should we stop the trials, Counselor?" the aide asked. "This is not what the arena was designed for." Morgeth considered the question carefully. "No, let it continue. I want to see how far this human can go." Over the following days, Taeho faced increasingly dangerous opponents. Each time, the Valdorians expected him to finally meet his match. Each time, he surprised them with new approaches to creatures they thought they understood completely. He faced the Void Serpents, psychic predators that could invade minds and drive opponents insane. Instead of fighting their mental attacks, Taeho opened his mind to them and showed them memories of Earth's oceans and the peaceful creatures that lived there. The serpents, who had never experienced such images, became fascinated and forgot about attacking him. He encountered the storm dragons, massive flying reptiles that controlled lightning and wind. Rather than cowering from their power, Tae-ho studied their flight patterns and realized they were performing an ancient mating dance that had been interrupted by their capture. He helped them complete the ritual, and they responded by protecting him from a sudden storm that swept through the arena. With each victory, the crowds grew larger and more excited, but they were no longer coming to see death and violence. They were coming to witness something unprecedented: the transformation of deadly combat into displays of intelligence and beauty. Word of the humans' abilities reached the highest levels of Valdorian society. Military commanders, scientists, and political leaders all came to observe. Many left the arena deep in thought, questioning assumptions they had held for their entire lives. "He's not defeating these creatures," observed General Korthax after watching Tae-ho's encounter with a pack of phase wolves. "He's communicating with them, understanding them, showing them respect. It's changing how our people think about strength," added Science Director Yelmoth. "They're starting to see intelligence and empathy as forms of power." Arena Master Vextar was becoming increasingly frustrated. Each day, he selected more dangerous opponents for the human. Each day, Tae-ho found new ways to connect with creatures that were supposed to be mindless killers. "Tomorrow," Vextar declared to his staff, "we end this nonsense. Tomorrow he faces every creature in our collection at once. Not even this human can talk his way out of a battle royale." But High Counselor Morgeth had other ideas. She visited Tae-ho in his cell the night before what was supposed to be his final trial. "Human," she said, studying him through the force field. "You have shown us things we did not expect to see. You have revealed intelligence and beauty in creatures we thought were simple beasts." "They were never simple beasts," Tae-ho replied. "You just never tried to see them as they really are." Morgeth nodded slowly. "Perhaps you are right. Tomorrow, when you face all of our creatures together, what do you expect to happen?" Tae-ho looked up at the powerful alien leader. "I expect to learn something new about each of them, and I hope they learn something about me too. Even if it means your death? Especially then. Death is just another part of life, but understanding lasts forever." Morgeth left the cell deep in thought. The human's words had touched something in her mind that she had never considered before. What if strength wasn't about the ability to destroy, but about the wisdom to create connections? The next morning, as preparations began for the greatest spectacle in the arena's history, she made a decision that would change everything. The final trial was about to begin, and with it, the transformation of an entire civilization. The morning of the final trial arrived with great fanfare. Every seat in the grand arena was filled. Ships from across the Valdorian Empire had brought spectators to witness what Arena Master Vextar promised would be the greatest battle in the arena's history. "Citizens of Valdos Prime," Vextar's voice boomed across the massive structure. "Today we witness the end of an unusual chapter. The human has shown interesting tricks with individual beasts, but today he faces them all at once. 23 of our most dangerous creatures will enter the arena together. This will be the ultimate test of strength." In the preparation chamber, Tae-ho sat quietly. He was not afraid, but he was thoughtful. Facing so many creatures at once would be different from his previous encounters. Each species had its own needs, its own language, its own way of understanding the world. High Counselor Morgeth entered the chamber unexpectedly. Her aide and several guards followed her, but she waved them back. "Human," she said, "I have been thinking about our conversation last night." "And what have you decided?" Tae-ho asked. "That perhaps it is time for my people to learn something new." She paused, studying his calm expression. "Tell me, what do you see when you look at our arena beasts?" Tae-ho considered his answer carefully. "I see prisoners. Creatures taken from their homes and families forced to fight for the entertainment of others. I see intelligence that has been ignored and pain that has been dismissed as unimportant. And what would you do with them if you could? I would send them home, or at least give them spaces where they could live as they were meant to live, not as weapons in a game." Morgeth nodded slowly. The trial will proceed as planned, but I will be watching very carefully, and after today, there may be changes. The arena floor was larger than it had ever been before. The walls had been expanded outward, creating a space that seemed to stretch forever. Different sections had been designed to accommodate various types of creatures: water areas for aquatic beasts, rocky regions for climbers, open spaces for flyers. Teho walked into the arena to absolute silence. 2 million Valdorians held their breath as the small human made his way to the center of the vast space. He sat down in his usual position, cross-legged and calm. "Release all creatures," commanded Vextar. Gates opened all around the arena's perimeter. From every direction, the most dangerous predators in the galaxy emerged. The Shadow Maw padded out slowly, its massive form moving with deadly grace. The 3 Razorbacks appeared together, their crystal skin flashing in the bright lights. The void serpents slithered from dark openings, their psychic energy creating ripples in the air around them. Storm dragons soared overhead, electricity crackling between their wings. Phase wolves materialized from nowhere, their bodies shifting between solid and ghost-like states. More creatures followed. The flame bears of Pyroth, whose bodies burned with eternal fire. The ice spiders of the outer rim, each one larger than a ground vehicle. The singing plants of Melodia, beautiful but deadly carnivorous flora that could move and hunt. 23. Different species representing millions of years of evolution from dozens of worlds. All of them gathered in one space, all of them focused on the small human sitting calmly in their midst. The crowd expected chaos. They expected the creatures to attack each other first, creating a bloodbath that would eventually consume the human. Instead, something extraordinary happened. The Shadow Maw reached Teho first. But instead of attacking, the massive predator sat down beside him, just as it had during their first encounter. The creature made the soft purring sound that meant contentment and safety. The Razorbacks approached next. They recognized Teho and began their crystal song, filling the arena with beautiful harmonic tones. The sound seemed to calm the other creatures, reminding them of music from their own worlds. One by one, each species approached the human, not to attack, but to greet him. The void serpents wrapped around him gently, sharing peaceful mental images. The storm dragons landed nearby, their lightning displays creating a protective circle rather than threatening attacks. The crowd watched in stunned silence, as every creature in the arena acknowledged Teho with their species' sign of respect and friendship. The flame bears dimmed their fires to a warm glow. The ice spiders created delicate ice sculptures in the air. The singing plants swayed gently while humming lullabies. "This is impossible," Vextar whispered from his control booth. His voice was picked up by the arena's sound system, broadcasting his shock to the entire audience. But Teho knew it wasn't impossible. During his week of individual trials, he had formed connections with many of these creatures. They remembered him. More importantly, they trusted him. He stood up slowly, surrounded by 23 of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. Instead of showing aggression toward each other, they seemed to be communicating. The Razorback's crystal songs mixed with the Storm Dragon's electrical displays. The Void Serpents shared calming thoughts that affected all the creatures nearby. "People of Valdos Prime," Teho called out, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's sound system. "Look at what you see before you. These are not mindless beasts. They are intelligent beings with their own cultures, their own ways of understanding the world." He gestured to the creatures around him. "The Shadow Maw comes from a world where pack loyalty is everything. It has been alone here for years, cut off from its family. The Razorbacks communicate through crystal harmonics that are more complex than most languages. The Void Serpents share memories and emotions in ways that create deep bonds between individuals." The crowd listened in fascination as Teho continued. "Every creature here has been taken from its home, separated from its kind, and forced to fight for your entertainment. But they are not entertainers. They are people just like you with needs and feelings and the desire to be free." High Counselor Morgeth stood up in her viewing box. "Human, what are you proposing?" I propose that strength is not about forcing others to fight. True strength comes from understanding, from building connections, from helping others become the best versions of themselves. The creatures around Teho seemed to sense the importance of the moment. The Shadow Maw stood and let out a deep, resonant call that echoed through the arena. One by one, each creature responded with their own species call. The combined sound was unlike anything the Valdorians had ever heard, a symphony of voices, from across the galaxy, united in a moment of hope. The crowd began to murmur among themselves. Some were confused, others were moved by what they were witnessing. But most were beginning to understand that they were seeing something that would change their world forever. "The human speaks truth," called out a voice from the stands. It was General Korthax, a respected military leader. "I have seen real strength in battle. This is what it looks like." More voices joined in agreement. Scientists, teachers, even some arena workers began to speak up. The conversation spread through the massive crowd like wildfire. Arena Master Vextar tried to regain control. "This is not what the arena is for," he shouted. "These creatures are meant to fight." "Why?" Morgoth's voice cut through the noise. "Because that is how we have always done things? Because we never considered that there might be a better way?" She descended from her viewing box to the arena floor. The crowd watched as the High Counselor walked among the gathered creatures. None of them showed any aggression toward her. They seemed to understand that something important was happening. "I have been a leader of this empire for 30 years, Morgoth announced. "I have seen countless battles in this arena. I have watched thousands of creatures die for our entertainment. But I have never seen anything as powerful as what this human has shown us today." She turned to address the entire arena. "We have built our civilization on the belief that might makes right, that the strong should rule over the weak. But what if we have been wrong? What if true strength comes from wisdom, from compassion, from the ability to see the value in others?" The debate that followed lasted for hours. Citizens throughout Valdos Prime joined the discussion through communication networks. The conversation spread to other worlds in the Empire. By the end of the day, the entire Valdorian civilization was talking about the human who had walked into their arena unarmed and changed everything. 3 days later, High Counselor Morgoth issued a historic decree. The Grand Arena would be transformed into a center for interstellar communication and understanding. The creatures held there would be relocated to appropriate habitats, or returned to their homeworlds when possible. Teho was granted full freedom and offered a position as the Empire's first ambassador of interspecies relations. His friends Dongwu and Sujin, who had recovered from their injuries, were also honored for their courage and offered roles in the new program. Several of the arena creatures chose to remain with Teho as companions and partners in his work. The Shadow Maw, who had been alone for so long, became his constant companion. 2 of the Razorbacks stayed to help with communication research. Even one of the Storm Dragons decided to join the team, fascinated by the possibility of exploring the galaxy peacefully. As Teho stood on the balcony of his new home on Valdos Prime, watching the city transform around him, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had been captured as a prisoner, facing certain death in an alien arena. But by choosing to see his opponents as individuals rather than enemies, he had sparked a revolution that would change an entire civilization. The Shadow Maw nuzzled against his side, making the soft sound that meant contentment. In the distance, the former Grand Arena was being converted into something beautiful, a place where different species could come together to learn about each other rather than fight. It had all started with one simple idea, that true strength comes not from the power to destroy, but from the wisdom to understand. And sometimes, that understanding could change the entire galaxy.